Alright, so I already did a video talking about how much I love the Dynasty Warriors series, why that is, and why it gets the backlash it gets. But some people are wondering about specific games, especially Hyrule Warriors, since that's one that's caught a lot of people's attention. How is it? How does it compare to other games in the Warriors series? Well, admittedly, I have not yet personally beaten the game. I was with a friend playing co-op when he beat the game, though, but I haven't, completely completed the game, so this isn't like a real proper review. Just a general overview of what the game is like, how it compares to other Dynasty Warriors and other Musou games. So let's get started. What makes it different? Let's look at the combat. The combat is pretty much your typical Warrior-style combat, where you have weak attack, you have strong attack, you do the chain of weak attacks, and you hit strong attack, do specials. I will say, though, that some characters actually have moves where you hit the strong attack multiple times to continue that as a separate combo chain. Though I have not seen any, alternating between weak and strong attack. There are some that have extended strong attacks, and I mean more than just 2 hits. Lana, in particular, has a bunch of moves, it seems, where you hit the strong attack button multiple times. There's also some moves where you actually hold the button to get a varied effect. The game uses dodge rolls instead of jumping, which is something we're seeing more and more frequently in the Warriors games. In fact, now most of the Warriors spin-offs give up jumping in favor of dodge rolling, and that really makes sense in terms of Zelda, and I will say this is actually a good thing, because while jumping's fun and all, it isn't really that effective. Dodge rolling not only gets you out of the way of enemy attacks, but you can use it to dash cancel your attacks, canceling out of them, negating some of the delay there. The big thing that sets Hyrule Warriors apart from the other Warriors games in terms of its actual mechanics, I would say would be the item system. Basically, as you play, you unlock new items, and they stick with you for the rest of the game once they're unlocked. You use the D-pad to switch between items, and ZR, basically the R2 button, to use that item. You can use the items infinitely. There's no limits on them, and they're basically used to solve quote-unquote puzzles like, oh, hey, here's a rock blocking the path, better throw some bombs at it. Oh, gee, there's an enemy that's, protected by a field of poison gas, I better shoot it with an arrow. Stuff like that. However, they can be used in actual combat situations. The bombs, for example, cause an explosion that knocks enemies towards you, believe it or not, just begging to be air combo. The hook shot actually does the opposite, bringing you closer to an enemy. I don't think the arrow's that useful. You can get a potion, which allows you to heal, and the boomerang can be thrown, and it hits multiple enemies, does no damage, but, stuns a bunch of them. And that's one of the big things here. The items don't really do a lot in terms of damage. They're really more about their effect. There are, however, power-ups that, for a limited amount of time, make your weapons super damaging. Awesome. You get the bomb power-up, and suddenly you're throwing huge bombs that cause gigantic explosions that deal actual damage. Other returning features include base capturing, which, as usual, you go into a base, there's a meter showing how many popcorn enemies you need to beat up. Once that meter is depleted, then the keep boss shows up, beat the keep boss, and you take that base. What seems maybe new to this one is that when you take the base, there's a big explosion inside of it that clears out most of the enemy units. Actually, come to think of it, the Dynasty Warriors Gundams caused a similar but slightly different effect to happen, but it didn't actually show the big explosion the way it does here. And then that keep now spawns your units, it boosts your morale, it causes your troops to and you get damage boosts and stuff. There's also little teleport troop endpoints scattered throughout the map, which just have a couple enemies guarding them, and they're really easy to take, and you can take those, and that'll also cause your troops to spawn in. When you actually have a whole lot of morale, your troops will begin glowing blue, and you'll get extra super bonuses, but if you're super low on morale and the enemy has higher morale, then they glow red, and you're gonna take extra damage from them and stuff. Another nice feature is the rescuing system, which was taken from Dynasty Warriors Gundam Reborn. I think this is going to be a keeper that I think we'll see in a lot of future Warriors games. Basically, when a unit is in trouble and they're asking for assistance, a little green circle will appear around them. If you run into that green circle, it will register you have rescued this person, and they will actually be healed at, no consequence to you. It doesn't take any of your health or anything like that. And I think that's actually pretty nice, because let's be honest, the AI is stupid. The AI will always be stupid. You can never count on the AI to be as good as a human player. So that's always been sort of a delicate balancing act in the Warriors game. Sometimes you have, units asking for help when they've only been hit like once, and then you rescue them, and it's like, that felt really pointless. You made me go out of my way for nothing. On the flip side, sometimes they'll ask for help, and they'll have like barely a speck of health left, and then it doesn't matter that you rescue them, because they'll get hit one more time as soon as you turn your back, and you'll instantly lose. So I like the fact that now they just acknowledge that the troops are kind of crap, they have stupid AI, so yeah, when you rescue them, they get full health ups. Woo. It's a nice video game accommodation. If I had to actually talk about what really makes Hyrule Warriors different from other Warriors games, though, I would actually say the environment and the enemies. Let's be honest, most of the Warriors games have crap stages. A lot of them are very brown and gray and bland, don't have a lot of topography, aren't really anything to look at. The stages in the majority of Hyrule Warriors actually look good. They have structures in them. They have, stairs and places and things, and the environment changes. You're going through this lava cavern, and then there's this, like, crystal cave area. You can approach ruins and stuff like that. Like, it actually looks like an interesting fantasy environment, and that's really nice. But the enemies are actually where the game really shines. First of all, I love the size differences on the enemies, because I think it's like a minor psychological thing, but it does make the game make a lot more sense. You see, what they did is all the little weak popcorn enemies that aren't any threat, you can basically take them out in one hit. They're short. They come up to Link's knees. They're little ankle biter enemies. But anything that poses a legitimate threat, anything that's actually worth fighting, is Link's size or bigger. So they tower over the battlefield. You can spot them easily. You can make a beeline to them. And again, there's this psychological thing. In the other Warriors games, when the popcorn enemies were the same size as all the other characters, not only did it make it hard to see the actual menacing enemies, but you're sitting there going, why aren't these people fighting back? Why are they so crap? But when you have little enemies that only come up to your knee, you psychologically think, oh yeah, those are ankle biters. Oh yeah, they'll barely do any damage to me. They're not much of a threat individually, and it's really just their numbers that are a problem. So I think it makes the game make more sense. But those taller enemies, these are the biggest difference for Hyrule Warriors, I think, and what really makes it stand out. The enemy generals, the tall enemies, they actually act like Zelda enemies. Their AI is significantly different. All of them have a bunch of special attacks. Some of them can teleport around and move in very Zelda-ish ways, and when they do their special attacks, there's usually a charge up, and then they do them, and then that leaves them open. So you're supposed to lock onto them, dodge out of the way, dash in, and wail on them after, when they're in recovery after doing their special attack. Now, this is actually where they repurposed something from Dynasty Warriors 8. In Dynasty Warriors 8, they had this weird rock, paper, scissors weapon element system, where if you use the right weapon against certain enemies, there'd be this meter, you deplete it, and you do this rapid slash that beats up a bunch of enemies. They kind of repurposed that here. Instead, that exact same meter appears above an enemy's head when they're in recovery. It's their weak point meter. And should you manage to deplete it, instead of it just being a generic, rapid hit thing, each different weapon has a unique, special move it does when you've attacked an enemy's weak point. So that's really neat. And it makes the combat feel more Zelda-y, especially combined with the lock-ons. Now, you have been able to lock on to enemy generals specifically. I believe that started... I'm not sure if that started in Dynasty Warriors Gundam 1 or 2, or in Strike Force, but somewhere around there, they made it so that way when an enemy general is there, you can lock onto them. That does, of course, return here, but it seems like the lock-on is slightly tweaked to look a little bit more like the classic Zelda Z-targeting system, and I think that does work out really well. It makes the combat, again, more fun. You'll notice there's a large number of tall, actually menacing enemies, to the point where you could actually remove all the popcorn enemies and just have the normal enemies, and it would still, Hyrule Warriors would still be a decent beat-em-up. But the big thing, and I forgot how much I wanted this in a Warriors game, are the bosses. The game has actual big boss enemies roaming around the battlefield, wreaking havoc. You've probably seen the Dodongo in a bunch of trailers. They also have some kind of dragon thing. I forget what it's called. I want to say it's called an Argo Rock. There's also Goma, which made me really happy. I was so happy to see a real proper Goma. I'm still kind of pissy about Twilight Princess's Armo Goma. I'm sorry, no, that's not a Goma. That's a Goma. I love Gomas. I kind of wish I could play as the Goma. And this is actually the first 3D appearance of Manhandla, which is this four-headed flower thing. It showed up in a lot of Super Zelda, but this is the first time we've seen it in 3D. These bosses, like, they're all, hey, dodge out of the way of their attacks, wait until they reveal their weak point, use the appropriate item on them, and then they're helpless and you just wail on them. And that can get kind of lame eventually, but still seeing these giant monstrosities rampaging across the battlefield is awesome. And the game's end boss, I don't want to spoil it, but wow. That is one of the most epic moments in Warriors history. It's one of the most epic moments in Zelda history. It was why I wanted giant bosses in these games. I'm so happy to see giant boss monsters. They're super fun to fight. Which does bring me to the legend mode. Is relatively lengthy and surprisingly story-packed for a Zelda game. I think a lot of people are actually going to enjoy this game just for the story, because this is one of the most story-intensive Zelda games I've seen. There's also this thing called Adventure Mode, which is kind of a variation of Dynasty Warriors 7's weird free mode that it had. I think it might have been called Empire Mode. I forget what it was called, but in Dynasty Warriors 7, they had this big old mode where there were like over 50 different stages that were super short. You could use any character to tackle them. In Hyrule Warriors, Adventure Mode is laid out in a similar way where, like, you start, it's the old Legend of Zelda 1 map. You start at, like, this central spot where you started in Legend of Zelda. At every mission you beat unlocks, like, the adjacent panels, and you get item cards, and you use the item cards on certain areas to unlock certain things, or unlock the ability to unlock things. It's basically how you unlock a lot of bonus stuff, like extra weapons to extra characters. This is actually where you unlock Ruto, Agatha, Girahim, and oh geez, I forget his name. The villain, Zant. They are unlocked here, and unfortunately, you can only use them either here or in two-player co-op play, which is disappointing because I was super pumped about playing Ruto, and it's still fun to use Ruto in that area. You can unlock it pretty quick. Actually, pro tip. As soon as you gain access to Adventure Mode, go in there, unlock, what's her name? Impa. Unlock Impa's Naginata. You can get that right at the start. Like, as soon as you unlock Adventure Mode, you can take the steps to get the Naginata. It is one of the, it's basically the tutorial unlock. And that weapon is freaking beast mode. Just yeah, it is so powerful and amazing. Like, I wasn't a big fan of Impa with the Vigor-on knife, but with the Naginata, wow! So yeah, I highly recommend going in there to get the Naginata. Which does bring me to co-op play. There is strangely no online play, and they've had online play in most Dynasty Warriors. It's usually kind of awkwardly implemented, but Dynasty Warriors has had online co-op, so it's weird that there's none here, so I'm going to blame Nintendo on that one, sorry. And the offline play is not split screen, it's one player on the screen, one player on the pad, no way to change that. I know some people prefer split screen. There is kind of a, you'll notice way more slowdown and frame rate drops in this mode than in other modes, and the player on the gamepad gets the brunt of the performance hit. And I will say that in single player, you do still see some of those performance hits. But one thing I did notice is there is significantly less enemy pop-in issues. Like, enemies will still pop in to a degree, but it's not like the ones that are literally standing right next to you. They have to be a few feet away before they're allowed to be affected by pop-in, which is the reason why this game has so much slowdown, because they really pack on the enemies. I don't think the slowdown's that bad. The people who are super picky about it might complain. Oh, I should probably talk about the scripting in the game, as a friend of mine was mentioning having an interest in how scripted the more recent Warriors games are, as the Dynasty Warriors series has become heavily scripted, the core series, I mean, because of the excessive focus on trying to tell a story. With Hyrule Warriors, I can safely say it hits sort of a middle ground. See, in the second stage, early on, there's a part where I captured a whole bunch of bases, and suddenly this one scripted event went off, and all those bases were instantly taken by the enemy. They were under enemy control now. There was nothing I could do about it. I wasted my time capturing those bases. On the flip side, in the very next stage, I had captured so many bases and was spawning in so many troops that we had excessively high morale and we were glowing blue. And it was at the point where it was like, basically go up there and beat up the boss, and a gold Skulltula spawned in, which is another feature in this game. Halfway through the stage, there'll be a point where you can find hidden Skulltulas on the map. And I went off to go grab the gold Skulltula. Meanwhile, my entire army went in there, ganged up on the boss, captured his base, and basically beat him without my intervention. The one before they summoned in a Go, by the way. So there is a degree of non-scripting in there as well. Basically, I think the way I would put it is that every stage has like a cutoff point for the scripting. Like, there are scripted events, they do affect things, but once it's done telling the story and it's like, alright, it's go time, just take out the boss, then the scripting's not going to get in the way, and yeah, your army can take out the main boss for you. So, that's there, make of that what you will. Each Warriors game has varying degrees of scriptedness, and also, in the adventure mode, there is significantly less scripting because those are extra bonus missions. This is another recurring thing with the Warriors games. The bonus, use whoever you want to missions, are usually way less scripted. Beyond that, I think I've covered everything. They're going to be releasing more characters and content as DLC, some of it free. I'm very happy that they're making Sia free DLC, because I was super grumpy that Sia and Wizro were DLC, and I thought I'd have to pay for them. But no, they're coming pretty soon. There'll be other characters as DLC. They're offering, like, some bonus campaign things, and it's a nice mix of free and paid DLC. So, overall, what do I think of it? Well, I think it's one of the least adventurous, but most enjoyable Warriors spin-offs. Like, One Piece Pirate Warriors had way bigger move lists and definitely felt, like, significantly different from other Warriors games, but in some ways I think that might have hurt it a little bit and I didn't enjoy it as much. This I would place much closer to Dynasty Warriors Gundam in terms of being much more like the normal series with only a few little twists and tweaks here and there. But at the same time, I think it's very good. I also feel that there's a little bit of extra Nintendo polish. This is something I forgot to mention. The game has checkpoints. In Legend mode, there are checkpoints in the stages. I guarantee you that was Nintendo intervention. Because, as a lot of people know, when you work with Nintendo, especially when you're, like, basically being a second party for them, they have a lot of say in how your game turns out. You know, they work very closely with their developers, which at times can be a pain in the butt because they're known to crack the whip, but it can also lead to extra polish. I do feel the game feels a little bit more polished than the average Warriors game, even if it is a little light on content compared to them. Big surprise, they get to recycle a lot of content, so there is that. But I do feel it's a little bit more polished than them, and the addition of checkpoints is definitely a great thing, because a lot of these stages are like a half hour long, and it's going to piss people off when they have to start the entire stage over again. So, if you're a Zelda fan and you're expecting a new Zelda game, you're going to be disappointed, because this is not Zelda, this is Dynasty Warriors. If you're a Zelda fan and you know, even if you've never played a Warriors game, but you know that this is a hack-and-slash spin-off of a Zelda game, of the Zelda series, if you know it's basically the equivalent of the licensed beat-em-ups of the 90s, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, X-Men, The Simpsons, if you know it's basically the Zelda equivalent of that, then yeah, and like you're prepared for that, then yeah, you're gonna love this. I don't think it's a system seller, but I think it's a great secondary. Like, when you get your Wii, you buy it for something else, whether it's Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 8, or Wind Waker HD if you're that big of a Zelda fan, and then you get Hyrule Warriors as your secondary. You know, that's what I would say. It's not enough to carry the whole system, but it's pretty meaty in terms of content. I think a lot of people are going to have fun with it. It's just, it can't be your only game on the system, because it's Dynasty Warriors. It is a bit repetitive. If you're a Dynasty Warriors fan, and you're not, like, that huge a fan of Zelda, which is basically the boat I'm in, as I said, I find it to be about on par with Dynasty Warriors Gundam. It's not going to blow like Dynasty Warriors 8 or any of like the big mainline ones they've spent a lot of time building up out of the water, but it is at least as good as the other spin-offs. I consider it one of the better spin-offs, and it is fun, and there's definitely something interesting about it. Like, the art style, the art design of it, makes it really stand out. I've never played a Warriors game that, looks like this, that has a fantasy setting and all these characters, and the fact that it's not based on an anime series, but based on a classic video game series is interesting. And the fact that it's Wii U exclusive especially. You're not going to be able to get this on any other system, and that's interesting, because it's based on a Nintendo franchise. So it does make it, if nothing else, an interesting adventure in the Warriors series. If not, like, the best one, it's a good one. It's definitely a good one, and I'm enjoying it. I do wish I could use Ruto more, though. Anyway, I believe that about covers everything I have to say about this. Maybe this will become a recurring series called The Warriors Report. Maybe it won't. I hope that was informative and told you everything you need to know. And I know one of my friends is going to get on my case on this, so I will mention this. As with a lot of Warriors games, the different weapons all have, like, different gimmicks to them, and the gimmicks seem more pronounced in Hyrule Warriors than in other Dynasty Warriors games. Like, specific weapons, it's like, oh, this one you can charge the strong attack, but the majority of them, the majority of the weapons, all have, like, the same gimmick to try to make them unique, which I think is kind of funny. Basically, a lot of them do this one thing to fill a meter that makes your attacks stronger. I know Ruto does that, Midna does that, Ganon does that. There's a lot of weapons where the sword chick does that. As such, I think Girahim does that. So, if that is a recurring theme where do a thing to charge a meter to make your attacks stronger for a limited amount of time. There, I think I've covered everything there is to say about Hyrule Warriors, short of being an actual legit review. I hope this has been informative. Anyway, this is Gel, and you've been Game Babbled to something. See ya!